What is, I'm sorry, is it bad to be a feminist as a Muslim?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Islam in and of itself upholds and supports and promotes and empowers women to the ultimate degree that no other, subhanAllah, religion, no other God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do that. Islam in and of itself is the upholder of the rights of Islam, the rights of women. So feminist, the word feminism, and a feminist told me this, by the way, a Muslim feminist scholar told me that feminism has a lot of different shades, so I shouldn't use it. And she actually shared with me some really extreme views, in my opinion, of what feminism is. So just because of that, in theory, it's absolutely Islamic to be a feminist. Do you want to necessarily use that word? I would say maybe not, because it really means a lot of different things, and this is coming from a feminist scholar, right, who teaches feminism. Perhaps that word is too clouded for us to say, hey, I'm a feminist. Say, I'm an upholder of women's rights, and my religion is the one that does that for me. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Take this question to Imam Omar Suleiman. How do we address racism issues in our community? We have Black and Muslim workshops, even in this convention, for example, but non-Black Muslims don't attend. They may feel it doesn't apply or it's beneath them. How do we address that issue?
You know, I think that if we're talking about addressing racism, there's a structural issue, there's a grassroots issue, there's the masjid level, there is the personal interactions level, there is the institution of marriage, there is the institution of Islamic learning, and different things. I want to share with you all, and this is honestly, it's consider it cautious optimism. I do think that times are changing, that inshallah ta'ala there's a an awakening of sorts that's taking place. And I think that collectively as a Muslim community, we have to not just rethink the barriers that have been artificially placed, or they're not artificially placed, they're artificial barriers that have been placed between the quote-unquote immigrant community and the African American community, the indigenous community, but to actually take appreciation and the indigenous roots of Islam in this country. I think that once the Muslim community starts seeing the African American community as the Banu Hashim of our community, period. And I'm not using that recklessly, by the way. I think there are a lot of correlations that our heritage as Muslims in America are the Muslim slaves that were brought to America, period. Our heritage, no matter where our parents are from, no matter what we come from, once we take that greater appreciation in that heritage, that greater appreciation in the legends like Muhammad Ali and Malcolm al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, may Allah have mercy on them both, who, if Malcolm was alive today, and I love MAS, I don't know if Malcolm would be given a platform at MAS. I think Malcolm would be considered too radical to be given a platform at MAS, and it's not because, okay, let me do it this way. If there was any organization that would give Malcolm a platform, it would be MAS. But no Muslim organization at the time of Malcolm's life wanted to give Malcolm a platform. And when Malcolm died, wanted to take on Malcolm or take ownership of Malcolm's legacy or embrace the body and legacy of Malcolm X in the 1960s. We often wait until figures are sanitized to embrace them. And then we appropriate them just like we don't like others appropriating them. We appropriate in our own way. So I think that there needs to be a greater appreciation of our indigenous roots as a Muslim community and our heritage as American Muslims that are found in the Banu Hashim of this community, to embrace fully the cause of combating racial injustice both within and without. How do you move that to the pragmatic level? Education, awareness, challenging ourselves in our own social and personal spaces to make sure that change is taking place. I would applaud MAS for having that session, alhamdulillah, even if it's one or two non-black Muslims that attend that, but maybe come away with a heightened awareness and then bring that back to their community. It's a chain reaction, right? So inshallah ta'ala we can continue to push the buck forward, but it takes each and every single one of us to challenge ourselves. Are we upholding any type of implicit racism in our own engagements personal and communal. One of the greatest problems, sorry I took too long on the answer, racism has no operating meaning anymore. That's actually the biggest problem that I see, is that a lot of people say, I'm not racist. But everything about them is racist, and they uphold racist policy and systems of racism and racist stereotypes, but I'm not racist. So we got to challenge ourselves. Not many people would actually call themselves racist, but are racist in their actions. And inshallah ta'ala, I mean, we'll get there. I am cautiously optimistic. I think that we're making a change, inshallah ta'ala, and it takes each and every single one of us to push back and to challenge some of the notions surrounding our African American brothers and sisters, Muslim and otherwise, in this country.
This question is for Dr. Jasser Auda. Regarding Surah Al-Mujadila from yesterday, I would like to comment that many of the questions and comments seem sadly to be as a result of sheer lack of knowledge and little effort to understand the rights and rulings regarding women. So what do you think we can do as a community to prioritize rulings regarding women and understanding of these ahadith that seem controversial or confusing?
I think that Muslim sisters have to be more assertive with the rights. Rights are not given by the strong to the weak. Rights are taken from the strong by the weak. And I think that Muslim sisters has to start having initiatives for breaking these barriers. I was in South Africa recently, and as you know, in most cities in South Africa, women are not even allowed in the mosque. And I was giving a lecture, and some of my students there wanted to enter the mosque to give the lecture, and the brothers prevented them. Actually, the sisters made a demonstration in front of the mosque and insisted on entering that mosque. And more sisters joined and so on. So the brothers at the end allowed them to enter the mosque and attend the lecture after it was started. But I mean, many of the brothers in the mosque, when they saw the sisters in the mosque, they left. But that is fine. But I was very proud of these sisters because they broke a certain barrier. They were able to take something by something that is not the most, how do you put it, the most polite, but I think sisters have to start to fight for their rights. And they have to seek people in the community who are willing to stand for their rights. You're talking about mosques, but issues in the family law and what we see in the communities in terms of family is more serious than women marginalization, if you wish, from the mosque. And our sisters have to start to take some stands, because without the authority of pressure, without some pressure, it's not possible to gain any rights. That's the unfortunate reality. Some of our brothers are great and good and understanding and accommodating, but this is the minority, first of all, and they are not, the law is not made for them. The law is made for people who are supposed to be pushed into ihsan, into excellence. But don't expect excellence as a default. It doesn't happen. Allah alam.
Sister Lobna, I have a friend that is starting to search for her faith. How do I tell her about Islam without burdening her with information? Is there anything you recommend for people who are searching for faith? This person is not a Muslim, by the way. She doesn't claim anything.
SubhanAllah, Bismillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah. I'll offer my thoughts, and please, we have people probably who would answer that much better than I. But just from my limited experience, I would say your being the best example is a great step. And definitely, you know, if you're out and Salat al-Dhuhr comes and you have the opportunity to do it later when she's not there, but you have the opportunity to do it when you're together, you would do it when you're together. Say, oh, wait a minute, you know what? I just need a few minutes. I'm going to go pray. Oh, really? Well, what is that? So that way, it's in a natural way. You don't want to always be like, oh, by the way, I'm going to be doing X, Y, Z, and just kind of really put it in her face. But when things naturally come up, let them happen. And subhanAllah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts that interest in somebody's heart, He will guide them. And the only reason why I would say, let things happen naturally, so that you don't inundate them with information like you said yourself. So I wish you the best, inshallah. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that as well.
This question is for Omar Suleiman. What is the Islamic view of athletes not wanting to stand up for the anthem? I was disappointed when the basketball player Mahmoud Abdul didn't stand for the anthem. The media was against him, as were some Muslims as well. I don't know if he means disappointed in Mahmoud Abdul or in this situation.
I think that we're witnessing in Colin Kaepernick the legacy of Muhammad Ali and Mahmoud Abdul Rauf and many other people that took a stand for injustice using their platform. It's actually refreshing to see athletes that are willing to use their platform and to suffer consequences in the process. Having friends that are Muslim athletes, a lot of times we assume that everyone's a multimillionaire and everyone's making it great, but a lot of those guys depend on their paychecks too and have obligations to a lot more people than we do, and they suffer real consequences when they decide to take those types of stands. And I think we should applaud that and we should support that. We are, the Prophet ﷺ taught us, "Man ra'a minkum munkar falyughayyirhu biyadihi." Whoever amongst you sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. If he can't do so, then with his tongue. And if he can't do so, then let him hate it in his heart. And that is the weakest of faith. That's the lowest branch of faith. So I think that that is exactly what we're seeing manifested in those things. And it's not just, look, this speaks to a bigger issue of how we approach politics as Muslims. I don't think we jump on every trend. I really don't. And I know that people make certain assumptions that if you're for this cause, that must mean you're for this whole other slate of issues too, because most people don't caucus on the basis of principle, but on the basis of party, and they sort of, they belong to these crews and these alliances, and whatever that alliance is doing, whatever that group's doing, then we do it now too. I think, and this is something I'll speak to tomorrow, inshallah, we have to be very intentional about what we do, and we support causes on the basis of principle and not on the basis of party or political benefit. There is there is no religion, and I really do mean this, there is no religion with a more embedded anti-racism tradition than Islam. Just explicit condemnations of racism in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. They're often deduced from, biblical frameworks for some people and other religions, but clear-cut ahadith and clear-cut sayings of the Messenger ﷺ and traditions of fighting and combating racism in every capacity. Police brutality is a real issue in this country. It is not some small thing. It's not because a few cameras just happen to get turned on, and it's getting worse. It's not like it's getting better, because people are being more emboldened to act without accountability now than ever before. There were more people killed last year in police shootings than any year before. So this is not a problem that is becoming minimized. This is a problem that's getting worse, and it's disproportionate with unarmed black men and even children, and that speaks to the larger problem of stereotypes and embedded racism, and also a lack of accountability. If you know that you have to answer to Jeff Sessions, then you're going to do whatever you want to do. Because at the end of the day, when the protests happen, and if the pressure is not strong enough, you might get indicted, but you're not going to be convicted. You're going to be let go. And there have been too many blatant miscarriages of injustice, and so I think that we have to fully get behind those athletes. And again, that's taking pride in our roots. Muhammad Ali was a deeply unpopular man. Prominent, respectable black athletes spoke out against Muhammad for his anti-war stance and accused him of disturbing the peace. And I'm talking about prominent individuals, but he still did what he had to do, and he celebrated later on. Watch what they say about Colin Kaepernick 20 years from now. the way our children will read about him will be a hero, inshallah ta'ala, for what he did. And that's part of our tradition and part of our deen as well.
Dr. Jasser Auda, how do we protect ourselves from following fake scholars of Islam or scholars who have been misguided or committed sins later on, especially in this age of YouTube when anyone can pretend to know Islam and act holy?
No, you're not a fake scholar of Islam.
We screen our speakers.
No, inshallah. Well, well, a short answer is knowledge. You really have to work on knowledge so that you have enough knowledge to differentiate between different people and where they come from. And it's also important to define different kinds of what you call scholars or, shuyukh or mashayikh, or because there are people who are activists, there are people who are speakers, there are people who are academics, and there are people who are scholars or ulama. The ulama is a different brand of people, different from speakers. Speakers are great, and they are, make da'wah and dua and so forth, and they speak to the media, but this is a different brand of scholarship from the scholars who basically carry the responsibility of the truth in Islam. So the real scholars by them standing with the truth, basically, wherever they believe the truth is, according to their knowledge. And the more knowledge you get, the more capable you are in judging this. Knowledge doesn't come from YouTube and doesn't come from these 150-word tweets. Knowledge comes from persons, people that you sit to and learn from, and especially how they think and how they act. And knowledge comes from books as well, like these paper things that you open, for the new generation. So you need to read books and you need to deal with scholars so that you have enough knowledge, and then you can judge. And also differentiate between Islam in general and Muslims, all Muslims, and between Islam and any scholar or somebody who claims to be speaking in the name of Islam. This is not Islam. This is somebody who is speaking in the name of Islam, and that person could be right and about what they say, or could be wrong, and they might have their flaws. And we all are human beings who have flaws. Some are small, some are very serious, I know, but we need to mature as a community and to be able to deal with the reality of the people and so forth, and to differentiate between Islam and the carriers of Islam, the warath al-nubuwah, the inheritors of the prophets, and people who are serving Islam, but they are not really inheriting the prophethood in terms of really living and dying for the sake of the truth. Allah.
Just one thing to add on to that. I like what Sheikh Jasser Auda always says too, is to, go with your community leaders as well. They know so much. Your local imam. You don't have to just always look for someone on YouTube with so many links and stuff like that. Your local imams are a wealth of knowledge as well. Next question for Sister Lobna. For the next time, is it possible to end the slander chapter with a list of Aisha's accomplishments? So, in 2 minutes, I want you to go from A to Z, everything that she did. No, just give us like 5 big accomplishments or things that Sayyidina Aisha is known for.
Oh, okay. You're saying you wish we would have ended that session with her biggest accomplishments.
Yeah.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is that she's one of the greatest scholars in Islam. SubhanAllah, it's amazing. She's related thousands of ahadith. And the Sahaba, they used to come to her. She was a faqihah. She was a scholar of Islam. She was able to make fatwas. So this is the biggest thing that pops out in my mind. The second one would be the courage that she displayed, and her dignity throughout the entire month of when the event of the slander that we just talked about. That's an accomplishment in and of itself. The way that she was able to uphold herself. Really, other than that, I'm kind of drawing a blank, but we'll definitely know, that's okay. But alhamdulillah, you know, we hope through the challenges that we'll be having, we have all of your emails. We know where you are. No, I'm just kidding. We have all of your emails. We're going to be, inshallah, we'll be sure to include that when we propose our challenges, inshallah, based off of each session, bi'idhnillah.
Next question is for Imam Omar Suleiman. Speaking of not compromising our standards, so what do you say about Muslims who say that we need to back up people who back us up and fight for our causes, specifically with members of the homosexual community? They stand up for us, so we should stand up for their issues as well. Shouldn't we be doing the same thing? And what do you say about Muslims who claim to fit into that category as well?
There's recently a publication on Yaqeen Institute, which I thought was a good exercise of beginning that discussion at an academic level, beyond just the blog sphere and beyond just a few Facebook statuses. It was actually published a couple of weeks ago. Dr. Jonathan Brown and Dr. Shadi al-Masri. So Dr. Jonathan Brown talking about what rights we can advocate for. Dr. Shadi al-Masri with sort of the response from a more conservative approach. And there are many layers in between. And what we wanted to do is actually start that discussion in a very honest way, where we can address these issues, inshallah ta'ala, beyond just sound bites or beyond just a few tweets and things of that sort, really breaking things down, because that's what our deen is about. So I'll address the premise of the question. As Muslims, we should always make sure that our platform is in accordance with Islam. I think that the greatest call for Muslims from a political perspective is fighting poverty, is fighting oppression. That's what our politics is. The conditions that cause the conditions that disenfranchise people. And I think that that's where we should be dedicating our resources to. I wrote an article that I hope you guys will look up, inshallah. And I hope you'll read it, because I was a lot less tired when I wrote that article, so my thoughts were probably a lot more articulate and coherent than they are right now. But can social conservatives be a part of social justice? Can social conservatives work in social justice? Actually, I'm going to try to find the exact title for the article. But I'm going to tell you guys, I actually want to get you the exact title for the article that I wrote, because I gave a lot of thought to that piece, and I actually shared it with people that are LGBT, that actually work with LGBT groups and stuff like that, and I wanted to get their input on it as well. I mean, look, we should be secure enough to have honest, frank, loving conversations with everybody, Muslim, not Muslim, whatever their background is, whatever it is that they represent, and be able to speak things with ihsan, with excellence. There is a way to address this issue. There's a way to speak about it. Insulting people is not from the deen. It's not a part of what we do. I doubt that Lut alayhi salam insulted his people when he was giving them da'wah, for example, right? There's a rhetoric and there's a way to address things and there's a way to speak to things. So that's the first thing. We have to make sure that our language is with ihsan when we articulate those positions. The second thing is, politically speaking, I think we speak to the greater issues that are affecting Americans at a very high rate, at a bigger level. Healthcare is an issue for all Americans. Poverty is an issue for Americans. Racial injustice is an issue for Americans. All of these things, militarism, these are things that are expansive issues that we should assert ourselves in. Immigration. I mean, I wish that I could push the Muslim community to take a more solid stance on immigration. Our masajid should be a part of the sanctuary movement. should be providing sanctuary. There are 800 synagogues and churches, not a single declared masjid as a sanctuary for immigrants that are being targeted under this vicious system. Yes, some of it legislated during the Obama era. So Muslims have to assert themselves in the things that are important to all people and not fall for the games of identity politics. All right, that's something that I want to make very clear. So I wrote the article, Can Social Conservatives be a part of social justice work? Just search my name, search social conservatives, search social justice. I know that's in the title somewhere. And the point that I'm trying to make is that if we assert ourselves in those areas that are important to everybody, anti-discrimination work, anti-poverty work, anti-oppression work, then we gain not just the trust of people around us, but we're able to have a more respectable voice on other issues. So how does this play out when it comes to issues of LGBT? I cannot, and I can have that conversation, I cannot make something halal that Allah made haram. I don't have that authority. I won't do it. I don't care how politically problematic that is. I just won't do it. I have a right to uphold certain moral ethics and frameworks as a Muslim and as an American citizen. That does not mean that I will be discriminatory. That does not mean that I'm going to show hatred towards somebody. That does not mean, and this is the key argument here, that does not mean that I will advocate on behalf of someone else when they have a legitimate cause. Meaning my anti-oppression work and my anti-poverty work and my anti-discrimination work has to include Americans of all beliefs and backgrounds, regardless. But I cannot endorse specific platforms and causes that are in direct contradiction with my faith. I cannot endorse specific platforms or causes that are in direct contradiction with my faith. This is not an all or nothing thing. This requires deliberate research and discussion of people that are scholars and academics and activists that come together and sort of address these things. And we need to be able to have these types of frank conversations, inshallah ta'ala. So I don't think it's a matter of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You do something for me, I'll do something for you. You stand up for what you believe is right, I'll stand up for what I believe is right. More likely than not, most of the time, that's going to play into the 85% of issues that are important to all Americans. Let's focus on that and let's exert our efforts in that. And the article also, what I mentioned, how many of you have heard of Rosa Parks? You better have heard of Rosa Parks. There's some interesting lessons that I think can be taken from particularly the black church. One of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm studying a lot of the early black, because black churches were formed not out of theological difference, but out of the need to have black religion, liberation religion, okay, black liberation theology, all right? My twin, as they call him, my brother, one of my closest friends is Pastor Michael Waters. You always see me with him. We literally faced death together on July 7th of last year in an anti-police brutality march when the bullets started raining down and 5 police officers were killed. We had the task of rallying the city together. After that, doing a lot of work. I see the guy 5-6 times a week. I truly do see him as a great man and as a great friend. The AME Church, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is the church of Rosa Parks, the church of black liberation, they still are a socially conservative church, but no one questions their commitment to anti-discrimination work. They still are a socially conservative church. They have socially conservative positions on gay marriage, for example, but no one questions their commitment to anti-discrimination work because they exert themselves in the 85% of anti-oppression work that's important to people in this country. So I think we exert ourselves in that. We're very honest and frank about our positions, but we should indeed improve on how we communicate our positions, how we negotiate, not the core principles, how we negotiate our religion into our politics in the sense that we figure out what's the best way, how does this play into a way where we can stay true to our religion but still deal with political realities. And I think there is room for nuance there as long as we're staying true to our core principles as deen. As long as we're not making haram what Allah made, or halal what Allah made haram, lawful what Allah made prohibited, and still being honest to our religion, then there is room for debate. a very good example, and you know, we have a piece that's being worked on right now, is the cake debate. What's the Muslim view on the cake debate? Right? If you know, the guy who wants to bake, or who did not want to bake a couple, man, I am so incoherent, I'm so sorry. He did not want to bake a cake for a gay couple for their wedding. And right now it's a major debate in the United States. What's the Islamic view on that? Well, it's not that simple. There needs to be, what's that? Bake the cake. So you would say bake the cake, someone else would say no, don't bake the cake. Some would argue that if we take the side of the baker, then we are legislating discrimination against Muslims as well, things that can be used against Muslims. Some would argue on the other side that, well, if we don't take the side of the baker, then someone's going to walk into a masjid and say to the imam that you have to do this, or Muslims will be forced to compromise or to do things that's not in accordance with their religion. There are valid arguments on both sides of this. We're anti-discrimination, but how does this play out with the legalities, like with the law itself? So we have a paper, inshallah ta'ala, with two opposing opinions. No one's changing the religion, but a paper that's being worked on by people that are arguing the nuances, the fine print, and the details. We're not just going to say this because this is what we're expected to say as a community. Let's let these be debated, inshallah ta'ala, in an academic environment and in a way that is true to our languaging and true to our core concepts. Wallahu a'lam.
For Dr. Jasser Auda, if you find yourself making tawbah, but also find yourself guilty of what you make tawbah from again, meaning you're continuing to make the same sin, how do you maintain your sincerity while feeling hypocritical and not using the fact that Allah loves the believer that makes tawbah?
Well, by making tawbah again, by having enough hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept your tawbah. And by knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept your tawbah, not because of anything that you did or anything that you are. It's because He is most generous, subhanahu wa ta'ala, most merciful. So to believe in the ultimate mercy of Him accepting the tawbah, and not to rely on what you did or what you did not. He accepts us, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and guides us out of His pure and sheer mercy, not because we did something before or we didn't. So just make tawbah again. Don't let the shaitan take you away from the way of Allah. Make tawbah again once and twice and 1,000 times. And every time be sincere in your tawbah. Look in your heart. Am I really sincere in this? I want not to do this again. And again and again. And if you, inshallah, continue to do that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at some point will give you a tawbah where you never go back to the sin, inshallah. Allah alam. Yeah.
It's not to add on, the article is Muslims and the left. Can social conservatives work in social justice? Muslims and the left. Can social conservatives work in social justice? It was an article I wrote for the Huffington Post in July. Jazakumullah. Can I repeat it? Muslims and the left. Can social conservatives work in social justice?
Sister Lobna, women can go to the masjid, but most of them give the excuse that it's not obligatory on them. It is only for men. Is this true? And what do you believe is the role of women in the masajid?
Okay, wonderful. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan. So Salatul Jum'ah is required upon men, right? And it is not required upon women, and this is a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala due to the monthly menstruation that happens, due to having the responsibility of children, of taking care of elderly perhaps, and too many reasons. So this is a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, when we talk about the masjid is a big space. That's now, we're not just talking about Friday, we're talking about any time. There's after school programs, there's Sunday school, there's weekends, there's all kinds of events. Absolutely women should be engaged in the masjid, absolutely. SubhanAllah, for us to ensure our spiritual health, we have to be surrounded with like-minded individuals. And I'm not saying only, so we're going to address kind of two issues. Number one, women should definitely not remove themselves from the masjid atmosphere and say, oh, only men have to go. Because it is your responsibility to maintain, to be around like-minded individuals so that you can benefit from one another. You know, when you see somebody who reminds you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you get revived. When you come to the masjid and you know, you're already struggling, you have your problems, you're weighed down, you see somebody else, maybe you're going to give advice to them and they're going to give advice to you. It's beautiful, it's amazing. There's too many benefits from being in the masjid. Social, perhaps you're going to learn something, maybe you're going to teach. Again, Islam is a social religion, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it as such because that's what's best for us. The second thing, and of course, not to say that that's going to be our only space. Of course, you know, women can go beyond that, but to exclude herself from the masjid would really be a sad thing for both men and for women and their children as well. And Dr. Jasser is the authority on that, so please add.
No, I'd like to. Yeah, well, if I may add anything, it's women are exempted only from Friday prayers, and that is in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And as our sister said, yes, because there are many, many reasons they are not required. But for everything else in the masjid, the Sharia deals with men and women on an equal basis. So the 5 prayers, women and men are encouraged to be in the masjid. The masjid activities, the charity, the celebrations, women and men, there is no difference in the Sharia except for the Jum'ah, because there is Surah Al-Jum'ah, as you know, and it's required for men. But other than that, men and women have the same ahkam, the same rules in the masjid. And I explained in one of the lectures, you can refer to what I wrote on this, about the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ asked Humayd that her prayers at home is better than her prayers in the masjid, and that is only because she had small children and she lived in Bani Sa'ida away from Medina. But otherwise, no, women were in the masjid with the Prophet ﷺ 5 times a day, and their prayer in the masjid is better than their prayer at home by 27 degrees, the same thing as men. There is no exception in this. Humayd was a particular exception that was misinterpreted by some scholars, misunderstood by some scholars. But it's not the case, it's not the rule.
Should I move out of my house? I don't get along with my mother or my siblings. No one's abusive, we're just not getting along, and I feel it would be best.
Oh man.
I know.
It's so difficult to answer a question like that without knowing like the very particular technicalities and details. So whoever asked that question, then I am subject to the generalities and the ambiguity surrounding the natural ambiguity, not intentional on the part of the questioner, but not being fully acquainted with the situation to give the best answer. So I'm going to address it with generalities. Everyone in here that has lost a parent can tell you how much a person, after they lose their parents, regrets that all of those disagreements and all of those arguments, and any time a person made them sad. SubhanAllah, I just came back from visiting my mother's grave. May Allah have mercy on her. She passed away 10 years ago in Louisiana, and SubhanAllah, I remember every single time I upset her, from like going back to like 2nd grade. That's not to emotionally blackmail anybody or to say you don't have rights. Everyone has rights. Children have rights upon parents. Parents have rights upon children. Definitely parents have more rights upon children because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored that bond so sacredly. Spouses have rights upon others. But that's just to say, try your best first and foremost to work things out in a way that's not going to cause hurt or permanent trauma in your relationship. I'm not saying to tolerate abuse, and I'm saying that you might have very specific situations and circumstances that require bigger moves. But for the most part, I think it is very important. One of the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ, hadith Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiallahu anhu, amongst the advices he gave him, وَلَا تَكَلَّمْ بِكَلَامٍ تَعْتَذِرُ مِنْهُ. Don't say things you'll have to apologize for tomorrow. Don't say things today you'll have to apologize for tomorrow. A lot of times, one person dies while you lose a parent when you storm out of the house, and you never get a chance to say sorry. and you never get a chance to make amends, and that's destructive, and you often don't forgive yourself for that. So just what I tell people is truly to, if you've done your best, try to do even better, inshallah ta'ala, to negotiate those tensions and to try to gain the pleasure of your parents. It might be that there's a mental issue, it might be that there's something extraordinary, that there's something out of this world that doesn't make that possible. And then in that case, you get someone who specifically can advise you in accordance with your situation, who's acquainted, who can talk to both your parents and you. But don't ever rush to turn away from a parent or to do that. Moving out is not haram, but don't move out on a bad note. Even if you need to move out because of tension, then don't let your parents know that even. Try your best to find a way that you're leaving because of some other logistical issue, if that's possible, as opposed to due to that tension. One of the things, by the way, that I tell people as well, is your parents fear, more than anything else, loss of relevance in your lives as you grow. They fear not being relevant. So a lot of times the tantrums and the control, you've got two parties. You've got one party that's trying to enforce as much control as possible because they fear that they're losing it, and another party that's trying to insist on autonomy as much as possible, to the point that they could become disrespectful and disregard and show ingratitude for all of the past, all of that was done to build you up. So you've got two parties. It's a power struggle. There's a power dynamic. I'm trying to ensure control. You're breaking, all of that and showing that you're completely independent. But at the core of that is not control. It's the fear of loss of relevance. That, are we still going to talk on the phone every day? The phone calls will start to become less frequent. The eating together and sitting together will start to become less frequent. As a parent, I need to feel relevant in your life. I need to feel like I'm still contributing to your upbringing and to your future. My dad is, mashallah, tabarakallah, he's 75 years old. And I still ask him for advice on every single thing I do in life. I hope this isn't being recorded. It's not being recorded, is it? Is this on camera?
Only 50 cameras.
Only 50. Yeah, none of this gets posted online. But no, really, I ask my dad for advice on every single thing. And I know it means the world to him that I consult him with everything that I do. Not because I'm dependent on him in any way, financially or logistically, but because it's a means of showing that taqdeer, showing that honor, and that reverence, that look, you're still my father, and it's good to get that input and that advice, and to show that relevance that a person has in your life. So try to maintain that as much as possible. I hope that helps. Again, it's a general answer. I know that there are specifics and things that I'm not acquainted with. If it's to a point of abuse, obviously, then that needs to be treated as such. Wallahu a'lam.
This next question is for whoever best can answer it. This person says that they've been struggling with pornography for over 15 years. It's gotten better though. They can go a whole Ramadan without watching, but they constantly find themselves falling into this sin a few times a month. What can they do to get help?
Actually, I'd like, maybe everyone can sort of give their input here. First and foremost, the questioner said it's gotten better. They were able to make it through a whole Ramadan. Own that and celebrate that for yourself. MashaAllah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. That's a sign that you can quit. That's a sign that you can quit. That's a good sign, and that's something you should celebrate. One of the things that shaitan tries to do is he turns one fall into a permanent fall, and then it's like, here we go again, and this is the path of doom once again, and I'm never going to be able to quit. So that you never overcome your addiction. Celebrate your victories. Celebrate in the sense that, say, alhamdulillah, Allah showed me that I have the strength to get through this. Hopefully I can, this is a sign that I'm going to be able to kick this habit permanently. Pornography is like a drug addiction. It really is. It does something to the brain, and it's not an easy addiction to deal with. And the reward of beating something that vicious for the sake of Allah, that reward with Allah is going to be so great. Bidhnillahi ta'ala. When you meet Allah with that you were able to overcome something like that, alhamdulillah, you are really showing your dedication, even your intention to really quit it is a sign of your wanting to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So recognizing its devastating effects, not normalizing it in your life, celebrate your little victories. Do everything that you possibly can to defeat it. What that means is, you know, I know that there's out of SoCal, Ziyad Ramadan, Purify Your Gaze. It's a good program, mashallah, for people that are trying to fight porn addictions, even if you have to use some secular system, not necessarily an Islamically based system, but there's some system to defeating a pornography habit. All of that is mujahada, and it's rewarded. It's a struggle, and it's rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every penny that you spend on trying to rid yourself of that habit, every program that you do, every step that you take is a step towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you're trying to rid yourself of it for the sake of Allah. Don't hate yourself for it. Shaitan wants you to despair. And I've seen too many young people despair. Not just young people, by the way, adults as well. Despair in their pornography addictions. Bidnillahi ta'ala, you can beat it. Every single time you get through 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, you're getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'll share with you guys something, subhanAllah. I had a brother that went to Hajj. I forgot how many times, just because it's that time of the night again and I'm drinking a lot of coffee to function. He went to Hajj like 6 times to beat a porn addiction. And it didn't, subhanAllah, he wasn't able to overcome it until the 6th time. Like it took him, like every year he'd come to Hajj and cry his heart out and say, I'm quitting, I'm done. And he really meant it. He really meant it. But the circumstances, everything happened, and then boom, one time, and then it opens, it becomes overwhelming again. So, he told me that he was porn free for 9 months, mashallah. And he said the fulfillment that he feels, the willpower, the strength, that, when you're able to conquer something like that, that does something to your self-esteem. It makes you feel like you can conquer other things as well. You know that you are able to overcome it, inshallah ta'ala. So you got it done for Ramadan, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. That is a sign that you will get it done forever. Do not hate yourself for it. But every time you make tawbah, and this is the last thing I'm going to say on this, every single time you make tawbah, وَلَمْ يُصِرُّوا عَلَى مَا فَعَلُوا وَهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ. One of the conditions of tawbah is that they don't insist upon it knowingly. What that means is that when you quit something, you sincerely have the intention that I'm not going to return to it. This is it, ya Allah, I'm turning back to you. I'm not going to return to it, and I'm turning this page with you. Should you regress after that, it's not like it's residual or everything before suddenly gets counted once again, the clock turns back and all of that. Oh, so you weren't sincere for everything before. No. It's as if you committed that sin for the first time, because the Prophet ﷺ said, "At-taibu min adh-dhanb kaman la dhanba lah." The one who repents for a sin is like the one who never sinned before. So be sincere in your tawbah. When you try to turn the page, do everything you can and celebrate your victories, inshaAllah ta'ala. And when you conquer, not if, whoever it is that asked that question, everyone that's struggling with that habit, when you conquer that porn addiction, you will be able to conquer every other sin in life as well, every other sinful habit, bidnillahi ta'ala. So may Allah help all of you and all of the young people and all of the adults and everyone that's struggling with that habit, and allow them to completely overcome it. Allahumma ameen.
Cannot emphasize enough, can never, of course, add to what Imam Omar said. Just wanted to emphasize again the aspect that it's an addiction, like he mentioned. And I really, aside from spiritual help, aside from social help, but really seeking therapy is important. I have addicts in my life, not of porn, but of alcohol and drugs. And an addiction, seeking therapy and going into rehab, that was the key to their success. So, treat it, that's what it is. It's an addiction, it's hardcore. It really needs that help. So I'm not saying only stick to one solution, but therapy is key. And I want to really just push that envelope again for those who are struggling in abusive relationships, in abusive households, for those people that are suffering from mental depression, from depression, or anxiety. Don't be shy about seeking therapy. Don't be shy for seeking help. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you different roads or different means for solving problems. All of them are at your disposal. Whatever's at your disposal, let that be one of them. So, jazakumullah khairan.
This question is for Dr. Jasser Auda. You mentioned that you lived in Doha, Qatar for some time, spent a few months there, and noticed that the Friday prayer khutbah seemed to be state-sponsored, focused on very basic issues. Why would a Muslim state suppress Islamic thought? And what is our responsibility towards those oppressed Muslim countries who are oppressed by Muslims?
Why would a Muslim state suppress Islamic thought? because a Muslim, what do you mean by a Muslim state? I mean, not specifically Qatar. I mean, most of the Arab countries, the khutbah is read. And actually, in the rest of the world, the Malay world, most of the Muslim countries, the khutbah is read, is given by the government to the imams to just read. That is not just a Qatari phenomenon. It's politics. It's a matter of Muslim rulers not wanting the masjid to be a place for opposition for their policies. And therefore, they try to control the awqaf, first of all, that sponsors the masajid and the universities, bigger ones like Al-Azhar and so on, used to have awqaf. When Al-Azhar had awqaf, it was free from...
What is awqaf?
Awqaf, I'm sorry, are the endowments, the foundations, the charitable foundations or endowments that support the masajid or support an Islamic university. But when the Islamic university and the masajid became state-sponsored, now they become part of the state. And the imam is a civil servant kind of thing. And therefore, he has to be in line with the government and its policies. Is this all bad? No. The government would say some good things sometimes. But from the Islamic point of view, no. The imam is supposed to be free. And the foundations that support the masajid are supposed to be free. They are not supposed to be part of government. In one of my books called Dawla al-Madaniya, I wrote in Arabic, called Civil State, I have a chapter, there or a section, on the illegality of having a Ministry of Islamic Affairs in a modern state. Because the Islamic affairs are supposed to be the affairs of the society, not the affairs of the state. The state is not supposed to sponsor and therefore dictate the Islamic affairs in a society, the endowments and otherwise. Yes, the religion is not supposed to be, or mashayikh, the sheikhs are not supposed to be above the state, but they're not supposed to be under the state either. They are supposed to be independent so that they can say the truth. And some governments give more space for scholars to say the truth and to express their opinions, and that is good. That shows a level of decency in some governments. Most do not, though. Jazakumullah khair.
In conclusion to this, I wanted to